All right, we're here at Podcast Expo. Learning a ton, right?
A lot. Learning a lot today.
We're learning a lot.
Very excited about being here.
I'm here with my friend Cam McCorkle. And Cam, I'm going to ask you all about your podcast, but we were outside in the hallway and you were telling me a lot of interesting stuff about what got you here. So tell me a little bit about yourself. What brings you to this place today? Why are you interested in actually, you have a podcast.
I do.
Tell me what it's all about.
So the podcast, as of right now, is somewhat of a self-help podcast. When I first started it, I actually started with my daughter. She's a teenager. And it was almost like a passion project, something that I wanted to do that I had the ability to start doing around the pandemic. And then after the pandemic ended, it was almost like, okay, I got to keep this thing going.
So you're cooped up with your daughter during the pandemic.
There you go.
And rather than playing chess, you guys started a podcast.
We started a podcast. And our first podcast was like our Dragon's Real. That was like the very first podcast that I put.
Our Dragon's Real?
Our Dragon's Real. That was the very first podcast. And our concept was like, if a dragon was real, how would it breathe fire? We were trying to figure out the technical way something like that can be realistic. So that was like the basis of the podcast and its true, raw, original form. And then as she got older, she's going to college soon and she's starting to lose interest, as most teenagers do.
Yeah.
And she came to me one day and she goes, "Dad, I'm not really that interested in the podcast anymore." So I said, okay, that's fine. And she still helps me out with a lot of videos that I do because I do vlogs too.
Yeah.
I do vlogs and then I do camping trips and stuff like that.
Wow.
So she's still interested in that type of stuff, which is great. But when she made the transition of not wanting to do a podcast, I said, okay, well, I want to keep it going. I wanted to have a little bit of substance outside of dragons.
I can see the transition from dragons to self.
Yeah, there you go. That's pretty obvious. There you go. Yeah. So I said, well, okay, if I'm going to be the face of it, if I want to kind of have a longevity in the podcast, I want it to be something that's tangible. And at the time, like I said, I was transitioning from basically, I wouldn't say being in the corporate world, but I was definitely catering to the corporate world with the company that I had. I built a lot of furniture. I had to deal with a lot of executives and designers and stuff like that. So it was a lot of responsibility, a lot of long nights, things of that nature. So the concept of doing something that would bring me peace, the concept of doing something to motivate myself became very, very apparent to me. I'm the type of guy where I've been self-employed since I was 16 years old. The last time I punched a time clock, I was 17 and a half and kind of made my own way since then. So I wanted to kind of carry that same personality in motivating myself and transitioning into a new life. So I didn't want to go on to YouTube or TikTok or Instagram and get inspiration from whatever motivational speaker wanted to post a reel that day. I wanted to be able to motivate myself. So I said, well, if I'm going to do it for myself and if I want to do it with some substance, I'm going to figure out what is beneficial for Cam. So if I turn on, YouTube, or if I'm watching Instagram, I want to be able to motivate myself. And if I'm able to do that for me and help one other person or be of inspiration to somebody else, even if it's one person, fine. So
it's a little breathtaking, right? Because we've got the pandemic which we all went through. And you're doing something literally just to have some fun with your kid.
100%.
And it turns into a podcast about dragons. And then next thing I hear from you, Cam, is that you are wanting to extend it and you're talking about peace. So it connected dots there for me. Was it the process of talking into a microphone that gave you peace? What was it?
Yeah. So I think because I'm an artist at heart, I think the ability to express myself was what was therapeutic. So yeah, I think it was speaking into the camera, being able to share my thoughts, and some people say it's healthy to talk to yourself. quite honestly, talking to the camera is really talking to myself. So I think it was just the therapy of being able to regurgitate some things, whether it be negative or positively, that kind of gave me peace. And like I said, the more and more I did it, the more and more I understood that, I was onto something. And when I say onto something, in relation to me gaining peace for myself. And so I was able to continue the process of continuing to grow just because I was getting gratification from what I was doing, and a release of just being able to kind of just share my thoughts, share my experiences, and motivate myself.
Unless folks in the audience have been a musician in the past, either as an amateur or whatever, they may not relate to this example, okay? But when I'm hearing this story and I'm thinking about a tuning fork, you know what a tuning fork is? And I used to play music, and you hit a tuning fork and there's this vibration, and it's just pure, and it's that note goes. And I think there are folks in the world who kind of hit that tuning fork as it relates to what really brings them joy,
100%.
Peace, all of that, right? And then unfortunately for a lot of us, we wind up kind of spending 8 or more hours a day doing something that doesn't sound like that note at all, or maybe completely off. I'm hearing that Cam kind of hit a tuning fork over COVID. Hit a sit.
100%.
Is that what happened?
That's definitely what happened, for sure.
And so now you're actually pursuing this as an occupation.
Yes. So I was going to say it's hard at times, but like I said, I think the silver lining moment is that I'm bringing peace to myself every time I'm posting something, every time I'm doing a video. Because for instance, this month and next month, usually what I do, I will take a book that I'm reading and I'll break it down, and I figure out how it can help me spiritually, with God, because that's the higher power that I believe in, and also financially with business, and how it can help me in my relationships with friends and with my wife. So this month I'm doing the 48 laws of power, for instance. So if I take a law of power, I try to break that down in a positive way and figure out how it can help me that week in those 3 different ways. So that's kind of like my own personal devotional for the week, or my own personal goal for the week. It's kind of like, it sounds like a one-man book club. Yeah.
Except you're sharing it with, how many followers do you have?
Right now I have a little under, or actually I'm at 4,000 now, a little over 4,000 followers.
Well, that's a bigger book club than is.
So it fluctuates so much. I've learned to stay humble, because I can go on there and I'll lose 100 followers in a month, and then I'll gain 75, and that's why I kind of always go back to the concept of, look, you're doing this for yourself. You're doing it because you want to be able to motivate yourself, and if somebody else likes it, that's great. I want to.
The benefit for the listener, I suppose, is that they get to see somebody interpreting a book. They may or may not have the same interpretation as you said, but they can maybe read along with that book and kind of compare theirs to yours. Is that the idea?
Yes, that's definitely the idea. Also, when I'm doing this podcast, I usually start off by saying, this is my humble opinion. The podcast, the name of it is My Humble Opinion, right? And specifically on YouTube, and even on Spotify, which I'm on there as well, you're able to comment, right? So I usually tell everybody, look, leave your comments down below. Let me know how you feel about what I'm saying. Let me know if you feel like you agree with this law of power. Let me know if you feel like you disagree with what I'm saying, and let's all get involved. Let's all have a conversation, because at the end of the day, everybody is going to have their own walk in life. Everybody is going to see something through a different lens. So the concept is just getting that conversation going, having somebody talk about their experiences, what they've been through, and at the end of the day, what happens is they begin to do what I'm doing. They begin to let it out in whatever positive, hopefully, way they can. So
let's talk to folks for a second who are thinking about podcasting themselves. So, and you're new at this, so it's all fresh.
I'm fresh. I'm very new, and I'm still what I would call a struggling podcast.
Well, that's even better. I think for the vast majority, we're in a big conference hall here, folks, and there are thousands of people here. Some of them, you and I have noticed that some of them speak with just incredible passion and confidence, and
yes,
they've got their elevator speech, and they're rocking and rolling. So I'm listening to you, and you're posting this podcast how often?
So I usually do every Sunday at 8 p.m. So once a week.
Okay, so you're posting once a week, and you're doing it from a book. Do you ever have a week where you're in a little bit of panic because you can't figure out what that chapter of that book means to you?
So, yes, almost every week.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah, and here's the reason why. Like, sometimes, depending on what the basis is sometimes it's hard to not be cynical about certain things. Like, I think one time there was one of the podcasts that I did was talking about being the perfect courtier, which is like being the perfect cheerleader for a friend, or being able to make sure that you're making the right decisions for people. And sometimes I find myself,
this is a chapter in the book.
So there's a chapter in the book, I want to say it's if I'm not mistaken, the 25th Law of Power, of Robert Greene's book called The 48 Laws of Power. It's play the perfect courtier.
Okay.
So for me, I'm looking at this law of power, and as you said, I'm thinking, hey, how does this relate to me specifically in this week? Because that's usually my concept. Like, how am I going to apply this, or how have I applied this before?
Oh, so the listeners are really not even just hearing your your broad thinking about a chapter, but literally you're trying to apply it to something that happened to you that week.
Yeah, I'm trying to apply it to something that I've experienced that week, or at least that year.
So let me guess, you went out that week and you just went out and did some cheerleading so you could...
100%.
Really?
100%.
Well, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So who did you cheer for?
So I was going to say, I the church I go to, I have a few people that I talk to periodically throughout the week. And I had a buddy of mine named Mark Julia. And, he's transitioned where he's basically retired, but because he's retired and he's younger, it's like they don't really want to stay home and just be at home. So he's been in a position where he's like filling out applications for jobs and things like that. And this week was just like, hey brother, you good? Hey, let me know if you need anything. We went out to eat at Applebee's, and he's like, yeah, I just wanted to bounce some ideas around because, if I take this job, it's a 2-hour commute. And it's like, okay, yeah, it may be a 2-hour commute, 1 hour there, 1 hour back, but, let's try to figure out the positives of this. He, trying to figure out, hey, I'm going back to work. I got 2 little ones. How are we going to, get them back and forth from, daycare, back and forth from school? So me playing the perfect courtier that week was like, hey, bruh, if you need me to pick up the kids, for a month or for 2 weeks until you figure that out, no problem. So yeah, that was kind of like, okay, I've got this law of power, I got this parable, I got this positive outlook on the week. Let's see if I can continue to implement that in what I'm doing. So that was like a real good, the best example for last week of how I allowed myself to use that in a positive way.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It seems like that approach, meaning this approach of trying to organize your commentary around something that just happened. It's not only fresh, but it's also, I would expect in some way the listeners are hearing that and they're thinking, yeah, this isn't like a bunch of canned junk from the studio, because you couldn't kind of make that up, right? Yeah. So you try to involve real people.
Yeah, I try to keep it as organic as I possibly can.
Yeah.
Going on. Hey, all work, no pleasure.